Hello, welcome back to the Midnight Quill podcast. In our fourth episode of this series, we're talking about using Amazon KDP. I'm one of your hosts, Tegan, also known as TC Emrys. I'm a writer, professional ghostwriter, and fiction editor. My debut short story collection, The Weight of Rain, was released last year.
So my name's Naomi Kelly. I'm a young adult fantasy author living in Ireland, in Dublin. And my first book came out in September 2019, Tribe Obsidian. And then last May, I released Merakia Siren Story, and the sequel, Kairos, just released this March.
Hi, I'm Angela Mack, or you can call me Angie. I am also a young adult fiction writer, and my first book, I Am Unworthy, released last year in July, and the sequel published in March this year, and that is called I Am Unbreakable.
So far this series, we've discussed self-publishing in general, editing your manuscript, and marketing before and after release. Today, we turn our attention to the self-publishing platform Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. This episode is not affiliated with Amazon KDP, I have to say that. We are just offering advice to help aspiring authors utilize the platform. What would you two say is the best feature of Amazon KDP for self-published authors?
I think one of the best things about it is that it's free. There's no upfront cost, which is something that is a big turn off for indie authors. A lot of the time you'll get adverts at the very top of Google being like, publish with us, and you'll click on it and it'll be like, we want €5,000 to publish the book. So I think the fact that there is no hidden cost, it is free. You just, sort out the cover and things yourself, but there isn't fee you have to pay to publish with them. It's a big benefit.
Absolutely.
I also really like their step-by-step guidelines. They are so detailed and so thorough. The first time I used it, I went in completely cold, not having done any research on how to actually use the platform. And I read through their guidelines and they were so easy to follow, really helpful, especially for formatting a print book, which I'd never done before. Really found their instructions so detailed and helpful. So yeah, I think actually anyone could do it. Even if you've never done it before, you would be able to figure it out fairly easily.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I was the same. I went in cold. We actually, in the first episode of this series, we talked a little bit about formatting, and I was saying I used a professional formatter, but there is the option to format it yourself through KDP, which is fantastic because that's like another cost that you can get rid of then, really, isn't it? I also wanted to mention, we talked a little bit about vanity publishers before, and like Naomi was saying, it's completely free to publish with KDP, which I think a lot of aspiring authors maybe don't know that. They think that there's going to be a hidden cost. And there are these things called vanity publishers, which they essentially charge you a huge upfront cost to publish your book for you. And, we widely discourage the use of that because you can do it yourself on KDP. Obviously, you have to pay for your cover and you should get an editor. It is actually free to self-publish on the platform. Yeah.
I think what you were saying about guides and step lines, like they do really kind of hold your hand through the process, because I find with some software, you log in, you set up your account, and then you're like, okay, now what do I do? There's so many tabs and headers, but like you were saying, they give you a step by step. And if for any reason you do mess something up, it isn't just out, your book isn't just out there in the big world. Like you can go back, you can fix little things, you can change your categories and keywords. So you can kind of learn as you go and then go back and improve as well. They're very friendly and approachable. They're this big monster software that's too far away or anything.
Yeah, their support team is brilliant, actually. Like, they're very responsive. You'll get a response, if you can't figure out something on the guides, if you email them or contact them through their form, they get back to you within like 24 hours, 48 hours. They are so quick. And I think a lot of people, I was speaking to another author and she was saying, I want to get it into a different category and I don't know whether I've picked it correctly and it's not showing where I want it to. And I was like, if you explain the exact thread of the category, all the different clicks you have to get to, and email it to the team, they will put it in the category for you. It doesn't matter what you've selected. So not only are their guidelines great, but their support team is so responsive and so helpful, which is, I think, a really big plus for indie authors, because you don't want to, like you say, you don't want to just put it out there and then think, oh God, actually, I wish I'd have done it this way and I'm alone and I don't know how to change it. And the team are really supportive.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is that with Amazon, it's such a huge platform that you can get your work out there to loads of different countries. Like I'm in the UK, but I have buyers from Canada or Australia, people that I never would have reached with my own website. I think that it's wonderful that you have that opportunity to reach those readers organically and through paid ads as well. Yeah.
I had a new customer or a new reader recently from Brazil. Just when I saw it pop up with someone from Brazil reading it, I was like, oh my God, it's such a surreal moment, like when those countries pop up.
It's so exciting, isn't it? You're like, oh, oh wow, I got a reader in like Austria or like Peru. You're like, wow, cool. Yeah,
It's great when your book can go places that you haven't been. It's quite a nice feeling.
absolutely. That's a really cool way to think of it.
When I was first considering self-publishing, I actually went to a local like library talk a couple of years ago, and it was by a small press who, thinking back, they did sound a little bit vanity press, where they were like, you give us this fee, we'll print it. You can only do bulk run prints, so you'd have to buy either 500 or 1,000 copies at a time. And I was like taking notes, being like, I don't even know 500 people. Like, I can't flog these books off if it doesn't go well. And I was just so overwhelmed when I found out that not only are Amazon a direct publisher, but that they wouldn't charge you to hold books anywhere, and it is print on demand, so there's no holding fees or anything like that. That was really refreshing to see as well.
Yeah, and the thing about print on demand is that if you have made any sort of error with the formatting or the cover, like when I first uploaded my first cover for The Weight of Rain, it was like all out of alignment, and I didn't know until I got the proof copy, and I went back and changed it. And that's the thing, because if you go with a press who says, you've got to have 500 copies and you don't realize something like that, next thing you know, you've got boxes and boxes of copies of your book that have got the cover wonky or something, or a great big spelling mistake on the first page that's really obvious. That's a whole other topic.
In general, KDP is a great platform. I will say the one thing that I'm not as keen on is their cover creator. I think compared to the other features of KDP, like Kindle Create, where it lets you format the ebook, it's such an advanced piece of software, really easy to use. They're constantly making updates, really like it. I said their guidelines, their support team, great. And yet their cover creator is, quite frankly, awful. It's so dated and very minimal and restrictive. And basically you have no choice but to upload your own cover. Like, there's no way that you could just go in and design a cover from scratch using their software and it actually be in a similar league to a traditionally published book. It just wouldn't look that way with the limitations it has. So although the platform I think is fantastic and definitely the best one I've come across, I do think that their cover creator lets them down.
I do agree with that. All of my covers I've made like externally and uploaded to the platform. I've never made them with Amazon. I feel like maybe it's not advanced enough for what the authors want. Like they kind of oversimplify. Like, I think if you have any bit of tech sav to you, you'd be able to do more than what they let you. They kind of simplify it too much to the fact where you could only really get a very simplistic cover.
And I think even if you are going for like a make your own cover option, there's so many better things out there. Like Canva is great if if you're going for that free option and you really can't afford to have a professionally done cover, then like it has so many more capabilities just in that one free piece of software compared to Amazon's create your own cover. If you could give a debut self-published author one tip about Amazon KDP, what do you think it would be?
I would say don't be scared of it. Just get stuck straight in. Like, I think the whole idea of actually self-publishing can be quite daunting, and you end up talking yourself out of it because you think it's going to be hard. I mean, and it is time consuming. It's definitely not going to be a quick thing, especially if you're going to do all the formatting yourself. But just literally give it a go. When I first did my first book, I didn't realize that I'd picked the wrong trim size template, so I'd formatted probably about half the book before I realized it was wrong and had to do it all over again. Frustrating, but it got me really well practiced at formatting for a start, so it was good. I think you build it up in your head to be harder than it is, and actually if you just get stuck in, make mistakes, figure it out as you go, it's really good. Don't be put off by it. I would say, just if you've thought about self-publishing, just get stuck in.
Yeah, definitely, I'd agree with that. I think it can seem a lot bigger than it is, and like you were saying, if you make a mistake you can fix it. I'm almost cringe when I think of this, but when I first put up Tribe Obsidian, my first book in 2019, when it came to categories and keywords, in my head associated them with hashtags. So I was like, oh, fantasy, just fantasy. That's it. That's all it is. Just fantasy. And my keywords were like sword and girl. And I was like, oh, looking back, they're just so not the right words to be using. But the great thing is, if you get them wrong, it's so easy to fix. You can literally go in and pick more niche categories, which is something that would be my tip, would be to research keywords and categories, because I thought I associated that with like marketing and things in my head. And I was like, they don't really matter, with algorithms and all that. But if you can get those kind of sorted, it will actually really help with the book's performance and visibility as well.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
you can do a lot of research, and there's loads of YouTube people that, you know, go into really specific details about what sort of words you need, and if you want to be in this category, what to use. So like there's loads of support out there. That's the only thing I wish I'd researched a bit more before I did it, but like Angela was saying, you can always go back and fix things.
One of the best blogs that I read about categories for KDP was Kindlepreneur. It's such a great blog, and I can't remember the name of the guy that does it, but he's got a great...
it's like Dale or something. I think he's very good.
That sounds familiar, and he does a really in-depth article on how to pick categories. And what I quite like about his blog is that he gives you two options, one which is labor intensive and you can do yourself if you put the time into it, and the other is he's actually created a tool that if you pay a certain amount of money for, and I don't think it's actually a lot, but they will create the keywords for you essentially. And I opted to do it the manual way, the long way around, and actually it did, like Naomi said, it really does help, because if you can get those niche categories, when you start getting sales, especially if you've got pre-orders for your ebook, Amazon takes into account all of your pre-orders as sales for that 1 week it releases. So it can really shoot your book up to the top of the charts. Massively. Whereas if you're competing for like a really broad category, like just for example young adult romance, you're never going to get into the bestsellers because you're competing with all the traditionally published books. But if you can find those really niche ones, 100% your sales are definitely going to be boosted, and your visibility is. So it's a really good point that Naomi makes about finding the right category and, you know, doing your research about how to get into them.
Kindle Unlimited is a service exclusive to Amazon KDP with mixed reviews from the authors I've spoken to. Do you have your books on KU for a start? And if so, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this service, do you think?
Yes, so I have all of my books on Kindle Unlimited. So basically what it is if people, it's like a subscription service that people can sign up to, and they pay a certain amount a month, and then they can read any books that are on Kindle Unlimited for free. So in terms of readership, I find it very helpful because people are more willing to give your book a go because they don't have to necessarily buy it or pay for it. It is free for the reader, so they can kind of get a taste for it and read it. It is great for helping reviews. I've got a lot of verified Amazon reviews from Kindle Unlimited readers, which is a great bonus because obviously if they're KU people, their reviews will be verified automatically, which is great because then their reviews will never get deleted, which is a whole other thing. But the only negative side I have with Kindle Unlimited is you have to sign an exclusivity clause and you can't put your books on other platforms. I was looking into putting my books on, say, Kobo and all these other sites, and you can't, unfortunately, because they're on KU, which I understand because it's an Amazon platform, but it is a little bit more restrictive.
I did see one great tip actually for that like exclusivity loophole almost, is to try it because it's for 90 days, isn't it, to
I think so, the first few months.
That's like the period that you can have it on. So another author was saying put it on there for the first 90 days or a random 90 days if you want to test it out and see how it performs sort of in comparison to putting it somewhere else, and then find out which one works for maybe if you have a series, especially like the first one on KU, see how it does, and then come back later, because you might find that actually your book doesn't sell that well on Kobo or Barnes and Noble. I think you can put maybe that's only America, but there's like a bunch of other places that you can go to, especially with your ebook, which obviously is KU is for ebooks. So maybe test it out and see how it works for you. But I've certainly found success with KU, which I wasn't expecting. The thing that I like most about it is that a lot of marketing that you do for your book doesn't have an immediate payoff. And often you can't trace where purchases have come from unless you've got like a specific ad running and you can see that the purchases have gone through there. Sometimes with like word of mouth or people see it on social media, you have no idea where that purchase has come from. And that's the same with KU. Sometimes you just randomly get, hundreds of pages read on KU and you're like, and it was probably someone who had seen your book at another point, shoved it in their basket and just forgotten about it and come back to it another time. And it's great. And it's, you know, you get paid for those page reads
Mhm.
over the course of the month or whatever, and it's wonderful. So that's my favorite thing about it.
I do love Kindle Unlimited. Even before I self-published as a reader, I subscribe to it anyway, and I love because there are books on there that if I came across them, I think, oh, that's interesting, but not interesting enough for me to want to pay full whack for it. So
Yeah.
I'll look at it and go, I'm not sure. And if it wasn't on Kindle Unlimited, I would scroll straight past it. Whereas if it is on Kindle Unlimited, I'll go, I'm not sure if this is going to be my thing, but I'm going to give it a go. And a lot of the time, it is my kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
And like one of my absolute idols is Megan Brandy. She's an American author, and she's got brilliant sort of new adult, more than young adult series out. And she puts all of her books on Kindle Unlimited. She's self-published. She has such a huge following, and is so successful. Like, that's definitely like the ultimate dream, is to follow in her footsteps. And her books do amazingly well on Kindle Unlimited. And every time she releases a new one, I think, oh, is this going to be the time she doesn't put it on Kindle Unlimited? Because, you know, if she charged £5, £6, £7 for an ebook, you would pay it, because she has such a strong fan base and such great stories. So I think to myself, oh, is she ever going to not put it on there? And every single one is on there, and it's so nice, because it means you get access to great stories without actually having to pay out all this money all the time. So actually, I really do like Kindle Unlimited. On the flip side, because anyone can put their book on there, sometimes you do trawl through some things and you're like, oh god, this was not edited properly, or oh my god, no, this is not what I thought it was going to be. but you feel more willing to try it because you're not having to pay for it. So although sometimes you can get a bit of a Kindle Unlimited, and even self-published authors can get a bit of a bad rap, I think that actually it does a hell of a lot more good than any negative connotations with it. I love it as a reader and as an author.
I had a look as well before coming on the podcast at my KDP, like say figures and stuff, and the Kindle Unlimited pages. Since my first release in September 2019, I've had over 8,500 pages read on Kindle Unlimited. Realistically, if you were to divide that by my book pages, not everyone would automatically have bought my book, but that's still people getting readers and reviews through that platform. You know, it's a great add-on for indie authors.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wow.
And also for other indie authors that you want to connect with as well. I found it really good if I come across another indie author on Instagram or, you know, on socials in any way, and their book is on Kindle Unlimited, I will go and have a look at it, and I will give it a go, and I will read it. Whereas if it's not on Kindle Unlimited, like, they would have to do some seriously impressive promo for me to think, okay, actually that sounds like my kind of thing, I am going to give it a go. Whereas if it's on Kindle Unlimited, I won't hesitate, I will go and read it. And I've reached out and, you know, connected with some brilliant authors through it. So I do think, especially if you're starting out and you're trying to build a fan base, I would definitely recommend going for Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah. That's the reason I signed up for it initially, actually. I don't have it anymore, because what I found is I read so slowly, it was actually cheaper for me just to buy the books. Because I think that's something worth taking into account. If you don't read, I read like a book every 2 months, because I don't enjoy them, just I read really slowly. So if you're going to do KU, it doesn't work out as cost effective. If the ebook itself was only like $2.99 and $7.99 a month, then it's not worth it. But yeah, it's fantastic if you're thinking about sort of review swaps. And we talked a little bit about that in the first episode as well with Roxana C. Revel. And she was talking about, you know, the thing with review swaps is you have to be selective of, you know, who you pick to do a review swap with, and you want to make sure that it's someone that you would be interested in their genre, so that you can give a comprehensive review essentially. And I think that facilitating that, KU.
Yeah, definitely.
In previous episodes, we've talked a lot about genre and what genre means for book marketing. How can authors use Amazon's genre categories to increase book sales and find their audience?
I would say don't get too wrapped up in traditional genres. And so, for example, I class my book personally as a young adult romantic suspense, is how because it's not all about the romance. There's quite a lot of other stuff going on. Yeah, Amazon doesn't have a category for that. No category maps to that. And actually, the category that I've picked it is young adult, but it isn't one of the romance subcategories. It's actually one that they call social and family issues. And then you can pick further into it, and it breaks out, like sometimes there's sexuality as a topic, or there's bullying, and then family issues. So it really dives into what some of the topics are, and you can pick. So actually, my genre is completely unrelated to my Amazon category. Like, they're both young adult, and that's probably all the similarities there. there. So I would say don't get too wrapped up in what you class your book as a genre. Like find the niche categories first and then almost work backwards, if that makes sense. That it doesn't sound like a particularly intuitive way to do it.
No, that's actually really interesting. Yeah.
I definitely would recommend identifying the categories you want first. And then even if your genre doesn't match up with that, it's not actually that big a deal.
Yeah, I definitely got caught up a little bit with categories at the start, you know, because you go in and there's a little plus sign beside fantasy and you click on it and you're like, oh wow, and it's just like 4 pages of different types of fantasy and each one has categories within that. I'd recommend getting into the nitty-gritty, finding a small category, because you don't want to have huge competition. If you're just general fantasy romance, you're going to be swimming with the big names and it's very hard to get out there. Pick a smaller niche. It doesn't really matter if your categories are spot on the genre that you would go put it in a library, because it's a different shelving system that they use. Something I find really interesting is if you type in a book that you love at the moment, like say like A Court of Thorns and Roses or something, if you look at the categories it's in, it's very different to what you'd expect. Sometimes it's like video game and retelling adaptation and you're like, well, how is that the same? But you know, everything gets shelved a very different way.
Yeah, that's a really useful exercise to do, actually. I think it was Brian Cohen's Ad School where I first learned about that sort of like, it's almost copying other people's technique, because you need to have a look, especially books that you consider to be like, you know, similar genres to your own, so that you can see how traditional publishers are sort of going about putting into categories on Amazon. And it was something I found when I was working with BookBub ads, actually, not the BookBub like where you can submit for paid ads, because it's really difficult to choose categories on those. And I think I ended up going with women's fiction or something, which that's a whole other term but to pick apart another day. But there was no category for what my book is usually considered to be, which is like contemporary or literary, or that's kind of the route I've gone down on Amazon, at least. So I instead went and found similar books, or books that my readers were also reading on Goodreads and that kind of thing, and like see what categories are they in, what categories can I utilize.
A tip that I would give is if you go onto Booklink, so it's BKLNK, a free website, and they have a little tab called Cat Finder. And if you put in a book number, so either your own or really popular famous books that you think are similar, it'll show you all of the categories and kind of keywords that those books are using. So you're not like cheating. You're just looking to see like, oh, there's a genre I wouldn't have even thought of. Because one that helped for me with my Meraki, my book that's based about the daughter of Poseidon, was to take more of the mythical road. I'd been so caught up with the fantasy side that I hadn't really thought of going down the myth categories. And there's so many little ones. And then, you know, you're able to rank a lot easier if you're going into Greek ebooks for YA teens. You know, it's so much smaller than a general term. And I only found that by researching other books, really.
Wow, that's brilliant. The other thing I've found helpful in the same kind of vein, actually, is Storygraph. Do either of you use Storygraph?
No, what's that?
It's like a new version of Goodreads for people who hate Amazon, basically, which I suppose anyone listening to this probably doesn't hate Amazon, considering it's about Amazon KDP. But, you know, Amazon's a controversial company. We're not going to go into that in this episode, but some people prefer to use Storygraph instead of Goodreads, because Goodreads is owned by Amazon, basically. And when you submit your book to Storygraph, it gives you, I think it's 3 descriptors to sort of help readers find your book. And it does it, I don't know if it's AI or if it's based on what readers say about it, I don't know. But so my book is emotional, reflective, and medium paced. I think it must be an AI, or maybe they have people read it, and I don't know. It was pretty interesting when it first sort of got on there and it said those words. I was like, oh, cool. Hadn't thought about it like that. Obviously, it's free to put your book on Storygraph, and lots of readers use it instead of Goodreads now. So another tool to utilize.
That's just pinged my memory, actually, when I'm thinking of stuff like that. Amazon has their other platform that runs alongside it called Author Central, where you set up your own accounts for the US and for the UK, and you can add things like your editorial reviews, link your book to your Amazon account page. And actually, I would definitely recommend signing up to those Author Central pages. And they have a separate support team as well. And I think the main perk of it is that you can put things like reviews in.
Now let's talk about KDP Select, in particular the countdown deals and free book promotions. Any tips for authors on how to use these successfully?
I always get a spike in sales when I drop my ebook price to 99p. There is something about going below the £1 boundary that people love. So even with your book on Kindle Unlimited, for the people who don't subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, if you drop your book below 99p, guaranteed you're going to see a spike in sales. I tend to do it when I've had a bit of a dry spell. So if I've had no sales for a week solid, then I will do some kind of countdown or, reduced price promotion. And as soon as I drop it to 99p, I can guarantee I'm going to get at least 4 or 5 sales the first day I do it, because it's that £1 boundary. People love it. So I would definitely say if you're struggling for sales for whatever reason, especially if it's your first book and you want to drum up some interest, then drop it below £1. Even if it's just for a week, it's a good way to boost your fan base and to start getting readers interested in your work.
Definitely. The most recent kind of countdown sale that I did was when my sequel Kairos was coming out in March. I went back to the first book and reduced the sale and was like, now is a great time to get on board, shared it on my social being like, before the sequel comes out, start where the journey began and like all that, and kind of promoted it that way. And I think I got more sales with the most recent countdown offer than maybe even in my launch week, because I think you grow your fan base as time goes on. And then when you have readers kind of waiting to jump in, once they see the 99 cent because it's below the pound, they'll jump on it straight away.
Even a penny can make a difference sometimes with the prices, but that countdown gives them time to get excited about it, doesn't it? Like
because it flashes in the corner and it's like a running clock running out of time.
Especially if you team it up with like an Instagram story countdown clock and really get that excitement going.
It also shows you the discount rate as well. So if you drop it to 99p and your ebook's normally quite expensive, or a £5 or whatever, it will be like 88% discounted. And as soon as people see like a big number like that, they're like, oh, that is a great deal. That is a bargain. So they just, they're far more likely to pick it. So I love that they, actually put the discount percentage in brackets. That's great.
Everyone loves a bargain.
Oh yeah.
The last time I did a countdown deal, I actually combined it with a Bargain Booksy promotion, which Bargain Booksy is a website. They also have free Booksy where you can give away books, and essentially you have to pay. It's not free, but they're fantastic. They have a like a reader newsletter, and they send out which books are going to be cheap on which days and how much they're going to cost. So they'll send it to readers that they think are going to be interested. And so I combined I think it was 99p or maybe 1.99 with a Bargain Booksy as well, and that really and I actually saw that even after the promotion had ended, I still had an increase in sales, like even after the Bargain Booksy and the countdown deal had ended, because people obviously click onto it and then Amazon tries to get them to like take it up a couple of days later, and they went, oh, okay, and paid full price for it, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so I think sometimes having a couple of things like work in tandem can really drive it up.
Sometimes if the book is free, I think people just download it and then forget it.
Yes.
Or they grab it and it just goes to the wayside and they don't think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Or if they do read it in a few weeks or months' time, they might not be as inclined to leave a review because it's not as fresh. Whereas I think sometimes if they get the 99 cent offer, or they're buying it themselves or paying through a Kindle Unlimited subscription, they kind of feel like it's kind of newer and there's more of an influence for them to read it and review at the time.
One of the things that I like again about Kindle Unlimited is you can only have 10 books out at once. And obviously you can download so if you give a book back, you can download it again. It doesn't stop you from, it's not like a one and done kind of thing. But it does mean that if someone is inclined to download lots of books at once because they're free with their subscription and they forget about it, when they go over that number 10 boundary, the list of books pops up and it says, pick which book you want to return. And actually that's quite good, I think, for prompting people's memories and thinking, oh, actually, I did. I downloaded that book, completely forgot about it. And so I quite like actually that it's restricted to 10, because then it prompts you to think, oh, do you actually genuinely want to read this or not?
I think it's really difficult as a self-published author to you have to try and put yourself in the mind of a reader and think what do you do as a reader? Sometimes we can take it really personally as authors and think oh, someone bought my ebook but they haven't reviewed it. Well, they might have read it and sort of forgotten to review it, and it happens. So we have to try not to take it personally.
And I confess, before I published my own book, I don't think I ever left a review. And I was a big reader before. I'm quite quick and I read a lot of, especially if I get into a series, I will binge read the whole thing. And even my all-time favorite authors, I don't think I'd ever left a review or a rating. It wasn't because like I was like, oh no, it doesn't matter. It just didn't even cross my mind to leave a review on. Like, I'd never used Goodreads before I was an author, and yet I consider myself as like quite a good reader. You know, I was supporting authors and buying locally, and then when I published my own book and realized actually how important reviews are, I was like, oh my god, I need to go back and review like all of my favorite authors, especially the indie ones, because they rely on them. Sometimes, you know, try not to take it personally, because I don't think people really realize the impact that reviews have, especially on something like Goodreads. And it's such a great feeling when you see a new one come in as an author, that you can you know, get trapped into refreshing it every day. And you know, I know it's the first thing I think of when I wake up is, oh, any new ones? And sometimes when you don't, you're like, oh, but actually there could be a group of readers out there that absolutely loved your book, and they didn't review it, but that's still a great thing too. There are some people out there that you don't even know about that loved your book and just didn't for whatever reason think to review it, and that's quite cool.
Yeah, and you'll never know what impact they had, because they might have read it, not left a review, but told 5 of their friends that they loved it, you know, because we forget word of mouth and real world connections are still a thing. Like when you're a self-published author, you get very much obsessed with like social media, but you know, the real world exists too. Remember that it's out there, and people who read books sometimes aren't on the internet all the time like we are.
We live here.
Yeah, we do. Let's talk about Amazon ads. What tips would you give to an aspiring or newly self-published author for using Amazon ads effectively?
So I'm going to be a little bit controversial and say that I have never used Amazon ads.
Ooh.
And I sort of made myself a promise that I was going to give it a good year of seeing how the book sold before I started investing more money, because, you know, as an indie author, even if you try and keep it cheap, you end up investing so much of your own money. And for the very small royalty you get back, is an ad worth it? So I really wanted to make sure, if I was going to do an ad, that I was 100% convinced that I was going to get that I needed the extra boost in sales. I have found at the moment that things like Instagram and promoting on socials, that is where pretty much all of my sales come from, is Instagram. Interacting with readers and other authors and doing, you know, posts and stories and things on there. And I feel like I've actually done reasonably well in sales through Kindle Unlimited and through Instagram, that I am not convinced right now that I want to do an Amazon ad. And from my point of view as a reader, if I forget I'm an author, I have never clicked on a book and bought it through an Amazon ad. All the adverts that pop up on my Kindle when I'm reading, I think, oh, that looks cool. I have never once clicked it and bought it. I really do wonder how important those Amazon ads are. And maybe I'm missing out on a huge chunk of sales because I've not invested in doing them. But I find that actually there are a lot of free ways to advertise, like on Instagram and socials, that do pay off reasonably well. So I'm no good. I can't give you any tips, I'm afraid, because I've never done it.
Well, no, that's a fantastic perspective to bring to this conversation, to be honest, because like you say, being a self-published author is really expensive. When I first published The Weight of Rain, I kept a spreadsheet to like try and keep track of everything I was spending, and over time I gave up because it was really depressing.
Right? Yeah, I did the same. I was like, no, I am not tracking this on a spreadsheet anymore, because that is heartbreaking.
It's bad for your mental health. Just don't think about it. But so I think you're absolutely right. Like when I first started using them, I thought, well, I've never bought anything from an ad, but apparently there are people who do. I think they're a really fine art. I mean, I'm going to ask Naomi to weigh in on this, because my perspective is just one perspective, but like it's such a delicate balance between spending a tiny amount and getting loads of sales, or spending a shitload of money and getting one sale. Like,
if you mess it up, it can really cost you, because the way Amazon do their adverts is it's quite different from other kind of social media adverts. So if you've done Instagram or Facebook, they will charge you, say, €5 a day or €7 a day for however long, and that's it. They will charge you per day, per amount, and it's set. But with Amazon, you pay for each click. So if you fine tune it right enough, you can actually do it very, very cheap. You can do it for €1 max a day and still, only pay 5 cents a click. So they are quite affordable, but you really do have to put in the time and make sure you're doing it right. Because if you pick a wrong category, if you were to say fiction, think of how many clicks and how many screens that's going to pop up on, and no one's going to want your book if they're looking for the Odyssey or something. You have to make sure that you really fine tune and find your niche audience, because you do not want to be paying for clicks that people have no interest in. consider it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it is fairly user friendly once you know what all the things do. So like you say, like Brian Cohen, all of his advice is out there for free. So like go and get it. It's fantastic. But the first time I used Amazon ads, it suggested a bunch of like keyword related
Oh yes.
yeah.
Oh yes. It like auto fills a list
That's
and you're like,
right.
oh, they have it done for me. I'll just verify this. And you're like, oh gosh,
Well,
so many
I
words.
just the first time I did it, I was like, "Oh, Amazon probably knows what it's talking about. I'll just use these ones." My keywords for the weight of rain were weight, rain, and short story.
And
Those
then your
are
book is going to show on like umbrella sites
weight
and weighing
loss,
scales.
umbrella.
And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it doesn't work. Like you have to really fine tune it. And
Exactly.
it's almost counterintuitive because some of the words it will suggest. So say for my book, it'll be like Naomi Kelly, Meraki. But people are going to type those in if they want your book. So you don't want
you
to
don't
show
need
your
to.
ad to those people. So then you have to like negatively remove them so that they don't show.
Yes.
So there's kind of a lot of fine tuning.
And you can also go in and tweak like all of the categories and keywords that you're targeting at any certain point. So at one point I was trying to target other short story collections, and I'd done all my research about, you know, what my readers liked and what other short story collections were popular. So I had a target for Joyce Carol Oates and some of her short story collections, and her name and like some of her books were targeted, but they were like 50p a click or something as the auto like amount that it puts in there. So
the
go
auto
through,
suggestion. Yeah.
and like take them all down to about 5p or something like that. And then over time you can raise them until you hit that sweet spot of like paying, I don't know, 7p a click and getting a sale. And then you can see which ones are resulting in clicks, but also which ones are resulting in sales, and then you can sort of like keep those ones on and turn the other ones off, and it works out quite well. But they're a delicate balance. They're difficult.
A tip that I would give for anyone that currently has Amazon ads going is for those numbers and figures. This is just from hours of watching YouTube book videos and everything, is for those numbers to always pick an odd number, because a lot of people will pick 5 cents a click or 10 cents or 15. But if you pick 11 or 16 or 19 cents per click, you'll always be outbidding them by 1 cent. So you're more likely to end up on pages for pretty much the same price. It's just one tip I read and it's always stuck with me. So I always do 11 cents or 16, because even though it's like pretty much the same price, you're going to outbid everyone that picks the number 15.
That's some big brain thinking there. Very clever.
And whoever figured it out, it really saved me time.
The first time I did them, what do they call it? Is it ACOS? I can't remember what it stands for, but it's like it basically means
like
how
Amazon
much your
cost of sale or something.
Yeah, it's like how much you're making from your sales compared to how much you're spending. And my ACOS was something like 210%, which is bad. You want it less than 100% essentially, because that's like your profit. The first time I did it, woof, off you go, like 210%. But once you get fiddling around with it, you can get it down to a really low number, and then you're actually making a heck of a lot. And you have to remember that anyone who has clicked on the ad, even if it was by accident, when they go back to their Amazon homepage, it always shows you the last thing you looked at, and that book will still be there. So you're getting it in front of eyes, which, I mean, is half the battle, really, isn't it?
One thing I will say though, like what Angela was saying, if you are trying to keep costs low, I do think if you have a bit of time and a bit of motivation, I do think you could match the sales you get from Amazon from other platforms. I don't think Amazon ads have necessarily, at the moment anyway, they haven't necessarily, launched my readership or anything. I do get a lot more of my readers from networking through Instagram or reaching out on Facebook. It's much more personal, and I think people are more likely to check out your book, even if it's on Kindle Unlimited, by talking to you. rather
Mhm.
than an
Absolutely.
advert, because like you're hard selling a book, you know. It does sometimes feel a bit cold call when it's like constantly at the top of a page.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can put a face and, you know, a personality to the book, I think you are more likely to have sales that way.
It's so much more rewarding as an author as well. Like when you connect and actually build a relationship with a reader, that's so much more gratifying than if someone's clicked on it and bought it and hasn't left you a review. But, you know, I've made some fantastic friends through Instagram. Like I've never
Yeah.
met them. I don't even know what they look like really. And yet we've struck up this friendship. And even if they don't read my book, like it's such a great way of connecting with people anyway, that I feel
Yeah.
like the reward, even if you don't get a reader out of it, is just, it's brilliant. I know
Yeah.
I made that mistake for my first book, not with ads, but with reviews, because I was like, I want some credible reviews. And I would reach out to people and some people wouldn't respond, or they'd be like, yeah, sure, for 20 quid or whatever. And you're like, oh, 20 quid, that doesn't sound like much. But by the time you've done 5 of them, oh my God.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, do they generate sales, those ones that you pay for? Mine didn't. And it was the people that genuinely showed an interest and was like, oh, actually, I'm really flattered that you've offered to give me a free PDF of your book. Yeah, I've never heard of you and it's your first book, but I'll give it a go. And then if they love it, they really shout about it. And
Yeah.
because they want to, because they've built that relationship with you. And all of a sudden you've got someone who's essentially marketing your book for free just because they like you as a person and they like your book. And that seems so much more valuable than doing an Amazon ad.
Our previous episode 3 of this series, was all about social media marketing. And we had Nathan James from Softwood Self-Publishing and Shauna Richmond, who is another self-published author. And we were talking about sort of all the free ways that you can use social media marketing, essentially. But I do think you can like use both almost. And I think that if you want to use Amazon ads, a lot of it is about timing. And like, especially if you've got more than one book out, maybe think about just using it for boosting your launch and like getting that off the ground, and combining it with like a book tour and, you know, a few other things along the way that are free to sort of make the most of it. But yeah, like Angie's saying, don't sort of get yourself down that rabbit hole of just continuously paying, because it becomes a bit addictive almost to like see the numbers.
It's time consuming as well, especially, you
Yeah.
know, most indie authors don't write full time. You have day jobs, you've got families, you've got your own hobbies that you want to do. And sometimes you can be exhausted, like your brain just doesn't switch off, because even when you've finished your day at work, you're then going to be watching hours of tutorials or, you know, stalking Goodreads. And actually, sometimes it's better to just take a break. And okay, your sales might suffer for that week, but maybe they won't. And maybe actually you won't invest too much time or too much money into something, and you will genuinely get some random people see your book. And just because you put up a cute picture of your kids on Instagram and they're like, oh, that seems like a nice person, I'm going to check their book out. So I think it's important to give yourself a break as well and not get too sucked into, I need to watch this tutorial and do this. Like it's hard as an indie author if it's not your full-time thing to keep up with that kind of stuff.
I mean, even if it is your full-time thing, I mean, I write full-time because I'm a fiction ghostwriter, as my day job, I suppose. Like, time is money for any writer, essentially, or time is sort of your writing time. And if you're not utilizing it to write, even if it's in the evenings, you know, however you spread your time for writing, you don't want to be spending all of your writing time watching ads and like making sure that everything is ticking along, because it's mentally draining and it's time consuming. You know, you gotta let it go at a certain point. I think
it's good as well for you know, people that are starting off, or maybe, you know, it's their first book and they're not sure what to do in terms of adverts. I think it is really healthy to see how your book goes naturally and see how it would go if you weren't really propelling it, and what sort of readers you would get and things, and then grow it from there rather than trying to make it an absolute mega success overnight. You know, it's okay if it starts off a little bit low.
Would you recommend Amazon KDP to new authors?
100%. It's easy, it's free, you're going to reach a ton of people through it. And yes, Amazon sometimes is a bit controversial, but hell of a lot of people buy from it.
Yes,
I love it. It's a great platform.
I don't think there's any other platform that I'm aware of that would rival it in terms of international reach, taking care of paperback and ebook, There's talks of them doing hardback in the future as well. You know, they have all the support networks. They're so well known as well, like everywhere. Everyone knows that Smiley cardboard box. I don't think you're going to get another platform that has the reach for free as you will with Amazon and Kindle.
The only thing I would say about Amazon being controversial, because I know some of my friends are trying to move away from Amazon, and for good reason. You know, it's got quite a monopoly on the market for a lot of things, and it's not a terribly ethical company. But what I would say is that any platform that allows indie authors or an indie creative of any kind, because Amazon also facilitates indie filmmaking and indie music and other things, a huge company like that has the framework for independent businesses to create. You have to kind of give a little bit of leeway with that, because so many of us wouldn't be able to create our art essentially and our livelihoods without a huge company like that supporting it. And so as much as they are controversial in the wider world, you know, maybe you don't want to buy your, I don't know, toiletries from there or something like that. That's okay. Go and find somewhere else for that. But in terms of books and what we're talking about, self-publishing, they can't be beat, because they are helping independent authors to realize their dreams and help them make a living, basically. I really don't think that can be understated, how like precious that is, even for a big controversial company to be doing it. It's fantastic.
I do think you can still have both. I think you can still support your local bookshops and get your bestsellers and your Stephen Kings and your, you know, Stephanie Meyers from your local bookshop, support them and still go to your library. But we still need somewhere for up and coming indie authors to go. And at the moment that is Amazon. And there's no reason why you can't champion shopping local, but still, you know, get your Kindle Unlimited. You can do both.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that because Amazon prints on demand, it does allow indie authors to sell in other ways as well. So for example, when I got my first batch of The Weight of Rain, I sold some to a local bookshop and they have it in stock. Is it going to sell millions of copies in there? No, absolutely not. But the point is that because you can get it print on demand, you can go to book fairs, or, you know, you can take your print on demand copies and sell them in other places. So it does facilitate that interaction as well. So I think we've said everything we want to say about Amazon KDP. Thank you very much to our two guests for coming on, Naomi Kelly and Angela Mack. We've really enjoyed having you and sharing your experience about Amazon and all of your tips and wisdom. It's been really useful for me, as well as hopefully for our listeners. Go and check out both of their social media accounts. We'll link those down below, and go and check out their books. Naomi has a book out called Meraki, which is a mythology based story, and Angela has a book out called I Am Unworthy, which is a YA book. Go and check those out on Amazon and purchase yourself a copy. Remember to leave reviews. We do love reviews as self-published authors. Leave us a comment on our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. We try to reply to all of your comments. Remember, when we hit 100 subscribers, we're going to be doing a Q&A session with me and my two co-hosts. You can also find us on Patreon and support us for as little as £1 a month, where you will find our official merchandise, as well as extra clips from the podcast and polls to vote for our future episodes.